as I mentioned, as much of the country is thawing out from this Arctic air mass that is, I'm sure it's wreaked havoc here in the capital of the great state of Texas, and as well as all over the country. Wrestling action stays hot. And to help me dissect it all, joining me on the hotline, not only is he the host of the Wrestling News, the Big Audio Nightmare, the Mid Atlantic Championship Podcast, he is also on Wrestling Observer Live weekdays with Brian Alvarez, and I'll say it till the cows come home. He is the voice of reason for that very fine program. It is Mike Sempervive. Mike, I'm glad you're feeling better, my friend.
I see. It's nice to be a voice of reason on a show with a reasonable voice, and I appreciate that. Thank you for worrying about my well being. I don't know if some of my other co hosts cared as much. I'm certainly not talking about Adam Summers. Of course, I'm throwing Brian Alvarez under that bus, but
Of course.
yeah, feeling a lot better from something that started around the holidays and just kept on it going there. So yeah, after the basically, as I said on Observer Live a couple of days ago, I'm on that full 90s locker room of things that were prescribed to me. You know, the steroids to go to try to fix some things, and then you got this codeine over here and then this thing over here, and it was certainly an adventure. But I'm almost back now. I'm almost up to ready to run up the steps there like Rocky and be ready for the rest of 2024, because that was the thing. It was like being in a haze. You had the Tokyo Dome show going on. You had a lot of the end of the year stuff in Japan. You had, there were reruns of Raw and SmackDown, or you had the best of shows, but then you had all this other stuff going on, and it was like a really scrambled time. So, in the last week or so, everything is kind of settled in here as we roll into Royal Rumble and WrestleMania season.
Absolutely, absolutely. I do want to get your thoughts because you covered Japan as well as anybody. So let me get your thoughts. It was announced before, I think, right before the end of the year, that Obari is out as president of New Japan Pro Wrestling, and in is none other than the ace Hiroshi Tanahashi, who has assumed that mantle. I want to get your thoughts on Hiroshi Tanahashi becoming the president of New Japan Pro Wrestling, as well as still an active wrestler. And oh, by the way, he is the new NJPW World TV Champion. So just give me your thoughts on Tanahashi in the presidency.
It is a fascinating story to keep an eye on, especially, well, if you are a Japanese wrestling fan, you know this already. And just from a business wrestling point of view, it's going to be interesting to see how the thing plays itself out, and what will make that process more interesting will be around February, if and when we find out what the status of the contracts of Kazuchika Okada are, what the status of Tamatanga is, El Phantasmo, Julie on the Bushi Road end of things, because we have seen wrestlers come over here to the States, sign with AEW. They may still work with New Japan Pro Wrestling, but they are not now New Japan Pro Wrestlers. And JPW does not look at Jay White first and foremost as one of their own. They look at him as an AEW wrestler. That's what he is now. There is a heavy play for WWE to get Kazuchika Okada and to get Julia. At least there's been reports of such. We definitely know that they want to continue to stick their tentacles into the country of Japan. They're back doing that again, seemingly through All Japan Pro Wrestling. And we have heard Bushi Road, and we've heard Rossi Ogawa kind of almost sound conciliatory at one point, saying if you're a fan of Japanese women's wrestling, if you're a fan of women's wrestling, you like who you like what promotion that you like. Basically, kind of intimating that, if you like NXT and WWE, we can't stop you. And we're at a very interesting period here with New Japan, because they're in flux big time. And we're seeing names like Umino and Narita, and we're seeing these younger guys come in, the Gabe Kids of the world, those guys. And we're seeing a lot of guys who are now old and who are now leaving. And Tanahashi's position, is it a figurehead to try to make people feel better? Is it a move because guys like Okada and Naito have seemingly made it clear that they have not liked the direction of the company and were not a fan of Obari? And we certainly know that Harold May precluded Obari. So now you actually have a wrestler that is back in that position of president. Is it to try to be a lube between management and wrestlers? Is it because you need an ambassador because you are slumping right now and you're not as hot as you used to be and things are down for you, and he's the perfect guy to be someone the Japanese fans can believe in and the wrestlers can believe in, and look at all the American fans who are fans because of Tanahashi in that era, and the wrestlers who grew up loving Tanahashi. It's very interesting, and it plays a lot of different things. He's a very intelligent man. He is a man that could be in business management. If he was not in the wrestling business, he could be in athletic management. I mean, that's been said about him. He's a very intelligent guy.
Mm-hmm.
It's just going to be fascinating moving forward what this all actually is, but I think we're going to get a real impression on what he is come February if we see names, who comes, who leaves, and what is the reaction, and how is it played afterwards, because people are going to be looking at him and they're probably going to be putting him out there to be the voice of whatever happens.
Right. And something you just mentioned that, when this was announced, it was it was pretty much the first thought that came to my mind. Is this is Tanahashi just going to be a figurehead? Is he going to be the face? Or is he actually going to be doing president things for New Japan Pro Wrestling? Give Tell me what you think. Which side does the ace fall on? Is it figurehead, or is he going to be involved in some of these workings? Especially with all these contracts that are coming up, it seems like there are quite a few New Japan talents whose contracts are about to expire. In the next 30 to 60 days.
I think while the negotiations on, money or things like that, no. But when it comes to promotion, that seems to be a big linchpin of what they want him to do, and what he's talked about doing is rebuild some of the ticket sales, rebuild some of the promotional materials, how things are presented to fans, how we get them in the building. I mean, that's been a big problem here in the States, although it's a separate issue. Can they ever get out of their own way here in America? It's the same way with, again, WWE over there too. It's tough for these businesses who are so established and good at doing what they're doing to come over here. They've had trouble branching out. Can he help with that? I think he can, and that's where he's going to be beneficial in trying to keep or be a convincing point to have somebody stick around and stay. And just his personal relationships in that locker room with the Okadas, or somebody like that. That would be the way that they would try to get somebody. I think that's how you would involve that, and him just being a good company man. It's one of those situations, though. It's like a baseball manager where you have the best of intentions for him, but he's not the GM. I mean, he's not Bushi Road management. Yeah, I mean, technically he's management, yes, but like they own the promotion, and so we'll see. We'll see how this thing goes. Does he have any booking control? I mean, that's going to be interesting too. Gato has been there a long time. Things have not been smooth sailing and perfect. Forget about COVID. Throw COVID out. And I know you can't when it comes to business, but honestly, when you look at just the art, and when you look at what has been presented to you, there were a lot of slip ups leading into that. I mean, the Bullet Club's existence now, being so long in the tooth, is one of those things. House of Torture. I mean, that stuff all started before COVID, and we're still complaining about it now. At least I am. Most fans do, because it is so scattershot. But they're at a point where, and I remember this time period where Tanahashi was a young guy and coming in, and Nakamura and Yutaka Yoshi and Shibata and those guys, like that's exactly where they're at now. And they're not going to be in as dark of a period as they were before. But I have a feeling for a lot of fans, they may be surprised as the year goes on, especially if they lose guys, which I believe that they will, how how different it's going to feel, because you really do have to do everything you can to pour it into this new generation, and it feels like that's how it is again. They even tried to use Three Musketeers again when
Mhm.
it came to the young guys, but they, regurgitated on that. But your Yoda Sujis, your Ren Naritas, your Shota Umanos, your Yuya Uemuras, Hikuleo. It's going to be an interesting one there because of his family, and if they have any ideas, I mean, now would be the time. I think now would be the time to go over there if I'm one of those Tongans. But again, fascinating on what is going to take place. And I think, if nothing else, he's there to be a stabilizing force. And he's, like any manager, probably going to be a scapegoat if things don't go well. You can go, oh, we tried, shrug the shoulders, we couldn't make it work, sort of thing. And then you're on to the next one.
Right. And and I think of guys like Yu Uemura, who just came off excursion. Not only was he active with Impact Wrestling, he was active on the independent scene. We had him down here in Austin uh, at least a half a dozen times, and he was fantastic.
Yes.
I mean, and he drew crowds, and you wonder what that how that lays in his mind when he goes back to Japan with all this, with New Japan trying to basically, reclaim what they had pre-COVID. And it feels like they're really trying hard, but it feels like they're spinning their wheels a little bit. And you wonder how long before Uemura decides, you know what? I was doing better in the States. Why don't I go back to Impact or go to AEW or go to WWE?
Well, that Tanahashi is like, if you think about it, as you're trying to push this new generation, you don't have Nakamura. He's a WWE guy who's actively working against you. You don't have Keiji Muto, which doesn't mean as much, but then again, the name still resonates, and he's working with Noah and WWE and whatever's going on with what's happening with them. You have Shibata, who's an AEW wrestler now. Forget about the active guys like Osprey, but you start seeing these legends go away, and it's like, yes, you have Naito and you have Ishii and things. It's not the same. They need Tanahashi to be there. And of all of those guys that we're talking about here, who's the one in some ways that could be most Tanahashi? Like, it's Yuya Uemura to me. I've been very partial to him. I think Yota Tsuji, he's no question to me going to be a incredible star for a long time. I think I'm surprised Shota Umino has gotten over as well as he has been, but he's going to be a baby face. I think that needs a Yota Tsuji as a heel. But like Yuya Uemura to me is the best of the rest of those cats right now, and again, he's the one. He will benefit greatly if they can somehow align him with Tanahashi or be one of those guys where Umino's kind of set to be where he's at. Yota Tsuji kind of is too. The rest of those guys need help. Tanahashi, he could use Tanahashi's help. He could use some rub from him. And that to me is one of the great, that could be a great benefit to having Tanahashi there and keeping him in the mix and having him be somebody that takes care of this kid. It's his project.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, we've had Wrestle Kingdom, Wrestle Kingdom almost all every year. There's multiple title changes. We've seen it. You had Nick Nemeth over there. Now he's got himself in the tip with David Finlay, who's the new global champion. But of course, Nemeth is also involved with TNA. You got Mustafa Ali is going to do the Windy City Riot show for New Japan Strong. Jack Perry showed up in San Jose and seemingly tore up his AEW contract, although I really doubt that contract is more than is one page. But nevertheless, uh, and Jack
I
Perry
know
is,
Michelle will do a whole skit on that.
I know, Jack Perry is the one that kind of I look at him and he's trying hard to be a heel, and I get it. He's got the scruffy beard, and everything. And yet I just cannot see him as a heel. It's just, I don't know what it is, but it's not working. Whether he needs to figure that out in this little New Japan run
I
before
hope he
he
has been trying to figure it out. How long's he been gone for? Is if the best he could come
well,
up with was an armband and doesn't have anything to go with it? I don't know what to tell him.
yeah, that's the thing. We hadn't seen him for the better part of what, 6 months, and this is how we get reintroduced to him. That he's allegedly breaking away from AEW, and he's calling himself a scapegoat, which I don't know what is he the scapegoat of? Is he, does he feel like he's the one being blamed for CM Punk leaving? Is it I it's one of those things where they're not going to go too deep in it because they don't want to mention Punk. Um
Don't we have NDAs about this?
yeah, exactly, that too. Oh yeah, let's not forget that. It just feels like maybe he works out this little heel thing in New Japan, figures out, you know what, let me go back being a baby face, comes back to AEW. Maybe he and Luchasaurus can reunite. I don't know. Give me your thoughts on Jack Perry and what we saw in San Jose this past weekend.
I think it's it's the right thing to do. I think to try to do something completely different with him, and if the character is going to be completely different, which it seems like it is, he's obviously, I'm pissed off about what happened after the all in, and I probably am a scapegoat because you're blaming me because I said, cry me a river, yet I'm the one who gets attacked. Why was I suspended? I could see how this thing could build itself. And look, is WWE working with Impact? I don't know if they are or not. I understand, New Japan. To me, if I could have worked out a deal with AEW with Impact, I probably would have did it there because it's not like you were. I mean, Strong and TNA were going on at the same times anyway. I think if you wanted people to really believe it, because there were some people that believed, okay, he's really tearing up his contract, and it's like, well, okay, you don't really get out of your contract that way, but fine. It made look the letterhead made for a great visual. I think
Right.
if he would have done that in TNA, that would have been huge. Now the problem is for TNA is then it's an angle, he's gone, and then what are you left with? Hopefully you got a nice handshake from Tony Khan for doing that deal, but I could see why it doesn't make any sense. So you use your partner to do it, and I you got to do something, and this is something. I don't have. I don't think he's as great of a blue chip. I've never thought that as other people have. I didn't see him in PWG, until a little later after the buzz started. From what I've seen with him in AEW, it's what I get his how he looks and what the reaction is to him, and I can see, okay, as a baby face and even as a heel, but I don't know. I need to see him dazzle me doing something, and he has not to at any point done that yet. And I like the Luchasaurus tag team that he had with him with Jurassic Express, but I don't see it the same way I've seen it with an Adam Page or somebody like that. I mean, terrible one, not a one-to-one example there, but like Ricky Starks. You tell me Ricky Starks, give me Jungle Boy, I'll take Ricky Starks,
Mhm.
8 days a week, and again, this is nothing against Darby Allen was the same way. And yeah, I saw it, and I was a little more partial to Darby because I saw him on the indies more than I saw Jack Perry. But again, even Sammy Guevara, another one who they've kind of burned out. But like, I need Jack Perry to hit me with something. And this is going to be his chance to hit me with something. It was interesting. Again, you do the same old tried and true thing. You tear up the contract, you laid somebody out, and that's going to lead to your first match. And it's a big name. It's Umino. And does that mean that that's going to be You get back in through the Blackpool Combat Club and feuding with them. It'll be interesting to see how they play this, but I mean, again, I'm willing to let this go, but I hope he can dazzle me because I'm not super sold on him, and certainly on the microphone, I have never been super sold on him, and he looks like the kind of guy that would lead a faction now. So let's see what you got. Let's see
Okay.
what you got.
All right. Let's see it. Uh, we saw on AEW Dynamite last week at the very end, Sting and Darby Allin get their win. Tony Schiavone's in the ring. He's asking Sting, who is your opponent going to be for your final match at Revolution? Here come the Young Bucks. Uh I mean, and they stood there. All right.
There came the internet.
They got mustaches and they got clean suits.
Somebody said whoever said, they were off for however much time they had and they came back and they looked like they were Gen Zers hosting the Steely Dan podcast. For whatever reason, that made me laugh. I guess maybe it's all the references combined into one. I got a huge kick out of that.
That's fantastic. I love that. So it looks like Sting's final match, it will be Sting and Darby Allin versus the Young Bucks at Revolution. And if you believe the rumor, innuendo, the reports, this is who Sting chose, and that's great.
I got that shrilly yelled at. Is that a word? It is now. Yelled at in my ear by Brian Alvarez, because apparently that was the first time I had heard it. Is when he said that. So
yeah. So sure. Hey, why not? I mean, and I get, that's fine. That's fine. Put them in the ring together. I would think Sting takes the loss because he's, old school guy. That's what you did, back in the day. You do the honors. After that, what's up with the Bucks? Is it we're going to be schmarmy about we retired Sting? Well, no, it was just you just have to be the right place, the right time. What do you think happens to the Bucks after Revolution?
Well, how much time did they want to take off? They wanted to seemingly take off more and work on things, and obviously they changed appearance a little bit and all that stuff. And again, if you believe it, and I have no reason not to believe that Sting chose them, it makes sense to me completely, actually. I mean, they're executive vice presidents of the company that has been paying you, that treats you like a god. You're killing yourself for them. You don't have to. You could just stand there, and Tony could yell Sting, and we will all just fall to our knees because we all love Sting. All right? I know I'm from an older generation. He's my guy, but like we all love Sting. Yes, we all love Sting. So, absolutely. Do they, I guess at this point, if you want Sting to take the loss, could you do something where, the Bucks get more frustrated as the match goes on and Flair interferes or something, and then that's when you come back with the Young Bucks, Colt Cabana, who else was it? Brandon Cutler, whoever was rumored for the faction of them coming back as a heel. Like you could start it then if you wanted to. If you didn't want to go in that direction, people are still not, full up to here of FTR and the Bucks. So FTR chasing off the Bucks, getting them out of there after they defeat Sting, or if they lose to Sting, either way. But that's how you get FTR. That's how you get the Bucks out of there, and then you have that last celebration for Sting at the end, where it's Sting and Flair standing there alone in the ring, for the final goodbye. And you then from there you go FTR and the Bucks, which is again not the worst idea in the world. Cool. Does it overshadow Bill and Starks? Yeah, and that's we'll see what happens there and what direction they decide to take that way. Because again, too, what you also have is if your plan is to put the belts on Jericho and Guevara, they get their title shot by beating the Bucks, who were sent into this tailspin. So I would say if they wanted to take a lot of time off, they probably shouldn't do that anymore. And they should probably just get to what they're going to be getting with afterwards. Because I think if they show up, do that, go away, I hope they're coming back with something good. And at that point, when do you come back? Do you come back around, because June is
Forbidden
uh
Door.
Forbidden Door, so it's like, are you coming back then in July? Like at what point are you coming back? I mean, for what anybody says about their TV ratings and the fact that they don't move them, I still would rather have the Young Bucks in a portion of my show, maybe not a 20-minute match to end the show, but like I want them there because they do make people look better and they can make average look spectacular. Again, everything is, within reason and everything's got to be put in the right, the pieces together. But at this point, I don't know. Now that they came back onto TV, you might as well just kind of stick around there at the very least, not once the match is done. Like, again, they don't have to be
Right.
beating the band every week on TV. They don't have to come back and wrestle before that match. Sting can do the promos. You can do pre-tape vignettes and all that stuff, but start from the time that match happens. Start doing what you're gonna do.
Yeah, I agree, and I do think the Bucks do attract some eyes.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think it's. I think let's do the push to the match with Sting and Darby at Revolution. Get that over with. Sting says goodbye. Then almost immediately, I would say the Dynamite after that kick off whatever it is that they've got in mind with Cutler or Cabana or whoever else is there. You mentioned Ricky Starks. Ricky Starks, Big Bill retained the tag titles in a wild street fight with Chris Jericho, Sammy Guevara this past Saturday on Collision. That was a title fight, right?
It was indeed. It was on the Battle of the Belts.
It was on Battle of the Belts. That's right, Battle Belts, which was right after Collision. Sammy Guevara, the 30-foot coming off the stage trellis there. Now look, I've known Sammy for 8+ years, and Ricky. In fact, the very first independent show I ever went to, the poster is actually right there, the blue one right there. Ricky and Sammy were the semi-main event at Inspire Pro Show. Now, of course, Inspire After Death. They were the semi-main where Ricky was the Inspire Pro champion, Sammy was challenging. So I've seen these guys.
Does it ever annoy you guys over there on the Texas side that the boy was born in Louisiana, but he made his bones in Texas? There are people that would say that. Hey,
No, because a lot of people came over, especially right around Katrina. Earl Thomas, who played for the Seahawks,
safety,
and played for the University of Texas. He came to Houston after Katrina, became a football star, became part of DBU here at the University of Texas, and then had a great NFL career, including with the Seahawks. Tried to get with the Cowboys a little bit. So yeah, that's why Ricky lived like right down the street from me. So and we see Ricky every now and again. He'll come back and he pops up at shows or whatever.
But is he throwing up horns?
No, he is no. Well, he's not a football fan. He's not a football fan. That's the thing. So it's one of those things. He feels himself above that. All these plebeians that go to football games. But anyway, I'd say that I love Ricky to death. Wild street fight. Rhett Titus's car gets damaged.
Like a good sight gag.
That was fun. Give me your thoughts, and do we see them run this back in a traditional, tag team match, maybe for the titles, or do we see somebody else take the titles off of Ricky and Bill?
I'm interested to see what direction they go. I'd like to see Bill and Starks hold on to him. I'd like to see them involved in a feud that's not too wacky or crazy or anything like that. Whether it be, because to me, I don't know, and they don't have to probably at this point, but if there was a thought of flipping Chris Jericho heel, just in case there's going to be boos, you might as well go, well, he's a heel anyway. It's not the best thing for Sammy Guevara or anything like that, but I thought you could do that and then flip Big Bill and Ricky Starks babyface. I think people want to cheer Ricky Starks anyway. and you could put them with the House of Black. You can put them with the heel Young Bucks. There's other groups you can put them with as baby face, as heels right now. I'm not sure after they move on what we're going to get. Are we going to FTR would make the most sense. You'd get the most out of that deal. We'd probably be more, you know, fulfilled as wrestling fans if that's the direction that they want to go with. But I would like to see them hold on to the belts. But the problem is, if you're not sure where you want to go, do you continue to go with Starks and Jericho, and you were with Jericho and Guevara, and you find a way to try to keep this thing moving forward somehow, some way, just because again, it's not the rock and roll in the midnight, but the chemistry is good enough where you can keep them kind of locked together until you have your next, good idea. And when it comes to Ricky Starks, they've had some good ideas. It's just a matter of staying with it. And now you've attached Big Bill to him, who is again turned his entire career around and has really established himself there as what Lance Archer was at the beginning, and I know he's still there as kind of the legend to do it, but sometimes you just need a big guy out there to put boots to faces and kick ass and can talk a little bit, and that's Big Bill. And I like the combination of them together, so I would definitely keep the belts on them. It's just a matter of they haven't established it. It looked like they were going to establish Top Flight and Andretti, and then Top Flight as a team, and now Private Party's back, but now they're kind of in there with each other. And okay, again, we're the champion. What do you got for the champions here? Unless you're going to put two people together. Look, again, this isn't the best scenario for now, but let's just say they were baby faces. Konosuke Takeshita and Powerhouse Hobbs is not the worst idea in the world. And, again, to have them in the mix as world champions of something, not the worst idea in the world, at least to me. You know what I mean? So, I don't
Yeah.
know, though.
Well, it feels like they're going to be at least in a program with Jericho and Guevara because they allegedly, interfered in the match, which
Yeah.
good camera work, sometimes shows the hiccups there, but that's okay.
They've had some of those.
Yeah, well,
Look,
one or two.
the brawl on Dynamite was terribly shot, and I know somebody from WWE that really is more of a production sees things from that kind of point of view. Who just
Yeah.
was throwing, I hated it because again, it was not filmed very well. Does the average fan at home see that? No, but when people talk about the pettiness between the two companies, there's a lot more of that than you think with like people who aren't wrestlers who are in other aspects of the business that just snipe back and forth.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Samoa Joe has his first defense of his AEW World Title this coming Wednesday, and it's against Hook, the FTW champion. Now, look, it's kind of like what we saw with Seth and Jinder last night on Raw. Um, you know, I really don't think they're going to put the world title on Hook.
No.
But is this to establish Hook as put him into that area of star where he might be considered a close to a main event star?
It's to firmly put him in the upper end of the mid card for sure.
Yeah.
Because right now he's just floating in the abyss of the mid card. He's Hook. He's special. He's in his own little universe. But what's he been attached to recently? What's he really ever been attached to? Where again, it's cool because he's Hook and the ring entrance and he does cool stuff and all that. Great. Having a kick-ass match with Samoa Joe and Samoa Joe doing everything he can to make this kid look like a killer. And he comes from a killer background because his father's Taz and he's a real athlete and he did play lacrosse and he obviously, loves his mixed martial arts and his jiu-jitsu and all that sort of stuff and make it all now take the next step. And that's what I'm hoping this is the next step where at the end he does lose this thing, and that's another thing. Great, takes a loss. So what? Now people will never have to go, is Hook undefeated or not? No, he lost to Joe. Who cares? He lost to the world champion. If that's his only L, So it gets that out of the way in case there's a concern that he's never been pinned before, because I can't remember if he has been or not, cleanly. And I think, Samoa Joe does beat him cleanly, whether he chokes him out, whether he knocks him out, whether he pins him. It's going to be a clean win for Joe. Awesome. You lost to Samoa Joe after a hell of a match. That's all people are going to remember. And then hopefully from there, then that's the most interesting part, is then where do you go with it? Because they've had a lot of great matches between two people, and you've had a lot of people get put over by someone and look great, and then they can't follow the damn thing up. We talked about Starks. They've been, hot and cold with him, or Sammy, or with plenty of people that they've had issues like that with. So hopefully they got some plans for him afterward. They better have some plans for him afterward. But I just think this is a case of Joe's going to go out there with a kid. I mean, again, from Taz to Samoa Joe to Hook is kind of a funny, growing up in the Mid Atlantic here, that Philadelphia, New York, ECW blood thing that kind of dribbles. And Samoa Joe, like a CM Punk, like a Danielson, like a Nigel, I mean, there was that blood that dripped into them, and that kind of evolved into what we have. From looking at it from that point of view, I feel very old all of a sudden, but it's just it's I think it's very cool.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. By the way, some that I always notice when I'm watching Collision, Nigel McGuinness, who is a fantastic commentator, they've got him in the heel commentator role. Okay, I get it. And I'll be honest. Look, personally, I am not a fan of that because I guess I want my commentary to be more sports based, and so I don't need a heel commentator. Nigel takes that heel commentator and turns it up to 11. It's like it's borderline just absurd, some of the things he says. I'm trying, I try to think back to the days of Bobby Heenan and Jesse the Body and those guys. But it feels like Nigel McGuinness is, if I did know better, it feels like he's being absurd for the sake of being absurd.
It's too much. It's too much. And thing with Bobby never gave you too much. Bobby was never, Bobby was really Rickles in that, again, as far as Jesse wanted to hurt you sometimes, and he cut Vince, or he cut somebody, and he kind of hurt him, but then that would be it, and then he'd jump back in again. Bobby always felt like Rickles when he got on stage, and I'm not, I'm doing this for fun and it's for laughs, and I really don't want to hurt anybody's feeling. But ooh, yeah, Gorilla, watch this. Nigel is like, you throw Piper into that mix, and then you kind of like, it's too much. It's always on. It's sometimes, I mean, there's picking and choosing your spots. The deal with Danielson, it's okay. Like, we get it. I get it. We get it. You don't like him. You don't have to throw a dig in there constantly. It's just there's too much, and especially when there's three people there, then it's really too much talking. It's really too much sometimes. It's just one of those things, and I don't think he's as witty or as funny. He's had some witty, funny lines. Again, I'm not trying to kill Nigel's work. I think he's a really good announcer, but I like a more reserved. I would like a more reserved Nigel McGuinness working with Kevin Kelly on that show. Pretty much just those two, honestly. And again, if you want to sprinkle Tony in, or if you want to roll JR in, for a match here or there, or something like that, that's fine. But yeah, when you're talking about taking up to 11, I agree wholeheartedly. And it's just, sometimes it's just too much, and when it's not always funny, it's just a bunch of crappy words. It just doesn't work.
Well, and that's the thing. And as much as he digs on Danielson, he goes absolute opposite end on like Christian Cage. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like he's running his presidential campaign. It's god awful. I mean, and there are just, like I said, there are times I just kind of have to.
And with a Corey Graves, and with a lot of what happens in WWE, because you saw it when he was working, when they decided to make Renee an announcer. And the first time all three of them with Cole were working with each other, they're all kind of it's all kind of loose and they're yucking and it's fun and it was an easy listen.
Yeah.
The next week, you could hear Corey starts going in on Renee. And it's like, because so it's like now they're being fed this, where it's like it feels like the complete opposite with AEW, where it's there's not enough production and direction going on, and somebody going, okay, pull back a little bit, shut up, sit out on this, that sort of thing, where it's like they're letting them go, and again, there's pros and cons to that. There's got to be a happy medium in there somewhere, I think, in these modern times. You can't let people go out there like it's 1982 and just go have at it, or we're going to really minimally produce you. And it should not be the other way where it was constant. I mean, brutality taking place from Vince McMahon inside your headset as you were an announcer.
Yeah, I agree. And you mentioned Kevin Kelly. Look, I love Kevin to death. I think he is one of the best commentators out there, and he seems to be. He's to me, he's the saving grace of that commentary team on Collision, because not only is he he all the experience he had doing New Japan, and then and then adding in his flavor, he's as close to a sports commentator in pro wrestling as I've heard in quite some time, and it's I don't know, it speaks to
You
me.
can tell he has 30 years, that's for sure
Yeah,
now.
absolutely.
It's, and
It's a
he's a sports fan too. That's the other thing too. I
well,
mean,
see,
he's
that's
a
the
sports
thing.
guy.
I'll compare him to the man I think does the best in radio play by play in the NFL, Brad Sham, who's the voice of the Cowboys. Brad Sham is he and Kevin Kelly are quite a bit alike. It's very straight. He'll throw in a barb every now and again. And it's not often, but when it is, it's funny. But at the same time, it's so good, and it's real easy to listen to. And so, yeah, I agree. Uh,
And I gotta be honest, is he's great, and I love listening to Dallas. I love listening to radio. That's how I will turn the TV down, and I got the Sirius, and I will always sync it up. It doesn't matter who it is, and as great as Sham is, he's no West Durham. I mean, West
yeah,
Durham is
okay,
West Durham. Dave Archer just fantastic doing the Falcons games. I mean, come on.
I agree. Hey, there you go.
Y'all don't hear him because he's on the ACC network
Well,
too, and
that's
you're
true.
usually not missing anything that way. But boy, is he
That's
good!
true.
And all the radio guys are good. Damn, we need more radio guys.
They are. Look, hey, look. I worked with one of the best in Craig Way, who was the voice of the Longhorns, and I worked with Craig for a decade. And Craig is, never mind the fact he is a walking encyclopedia. He can tell you, because he not only is he the voice of the Longhorns, he does March Madness quite a bit. He'll do it for Westwood One and stuff. He also does high school football, and he'll do they do the Texas high school scoreboard on Valley Sports Southwest here, and he can tell you who played second string tight end for Elgin High School in 1987.
I love it.
He's that good, and and like I said, I work with Craig. I got to it just it blows my mind how much knowledge is in his head. So good sports commentators are they're gold, and we should always treasure them. So
And then TV guys should have to do some radio because who's
I
I'm going to brain log now the Chiefs old Chiefs radio, and he does
oh
such a fantastic job on Monday Night Football on the radio.
oh
He's the
Kevin Harlan.
Kevin Harlan. I mean, my
Love
God,
Kevin.
and Kevin Harlan, in all those years of cutting his teeth in radio, being descriptive and knowing when to sit out at times, and when, to me, those guys, and again, I have an old love for the Chuck Thompsons and the people from years ago, but boy, you would be to me, you're so much better served having to do it that way. Everybody should spend some time doing minor league baseball because you learn how to fill. You learn there's just to me there's so many things that you can get from radio that Again, it's a different era. I guess in some ways you don't need that because there's all these other weird things you got to worry about being a broadcaster now, and all everything being as much about your look as your voice. But to me, it makes a better broadcaster, and ultimately down the line makes you better.
Yeah, I agree. I had the absolute, honor of interviewing Kevin Harlan. It was Radio Row Super Bowl 53, I think, Atlanta. We had a great talk. And of course, Kevin Harlan, he's kind of like become the Jim Nance alternative. He does everything, basketball,
Everything.
golf, everything. And he and I had a great chat. And we see each other. We saw each other. In fact, we saw him. We saw each other in Miami. I'm at Hard Rock Stadium for Super Bowl 54, and I'm walking the concourse before I get to my seat. And Kevin's walking that way. He and I stopped. We chatted, and it was so good to hear him because he was doing the game for Westwood One. So good. You mentioned minor league baseball. I saw a picture today that made me smile. Mike Capps, who is the radio voice for the Round Rock Express here in the Austin area, Round Rock Express, AAA affiliate for the Texas Rangers. Him and the man that called the Ice Bowl was the first radio voice of the Dallas Cowboys and the Texas Rangers, and the voice of World Class Championship Wrestling, Bill Mercer. So apparently he and Mike are like best friends. They've
Oh,
known each other for decades. Bill would come to Round Rock and call games with Mike, and it was absolute gold. And I got to meet Mr. Mercer a handful of times, interviewed him a couple times. I mean, just he's one of those men. He's still around. He's 95, I think.
man.
And, and just,
One of the oldest personalities left in wrestling in the world, let
yes,
alone just in the he and Bob Cottle.
yes,
He and Bob Cottle both very lucky to have them. And man, Bill Mercer. And I just saw Iron Claw over the weekend, dude. First movie I've seen in forever. And obviously they have the guy that he gets the attitude right, but you don't get the right. It's just Bill
don't get
Mercer was just so you could tell even as a little kid there was something different about him, and then you find out like the history of that voice because there was just you can tell, and I guess maybe if you're partial to radio, you can tell a little more. It's like
yeah,
there's something special about this guy, and then you go back and you look at the history, and it's like perfect, right up my alley of football as well too. Like the Dallas Cowboys, the first one, Bill Mercer.
yeah.
SMU. All these were who was it? It was SMU, right? That he
SMU, and then he taught at North
North
Texas.
Texas. That's what it was. Yeah, that's it.
Frank,
So
Frank,
it's just
Frank White
awesome.
was one of his students.
God, it's incredible. God, incredible.
Before we get to WWE, what do you think of Iron Claw?
I thought it was great.
Yeah,
I thought it was one of those things. It was like because you hear all about it going in. When you know the story or a lot of the story, and all the minute wrestling details of it. It's like okay, so it's not going to be that, but what is this going to be? And my wife was really up on wanting to see it. She really wanted to see it and wanted to see it in the theater. And it's like, okay, is this going to be very much like Showtime in the HBO Lakers deal, where there's a lot of dramatization and there's a lot of shoving things together and things being way out of place. And I never really got that impression. There were the things that you knew the timeline was off on, or things that were not didn't go as they looked like they were going, like the sale of the company, and the Chris and Mike basically as one character of Mike Von Erich, as opposed to that's why Chris wasn't in there. And you could see again they did such a I thought they did a great job with a story that was just every time the average person that doesn't know the story would watch it, it's like, oh God, there's another one, there's another one. And I thought, I mean, the tear went down my eye when the whole thing, and you have Carrie out in the water again, and he goes up to the pier, and it was like, and then Kevin's left standing. I thought that was, I thought that was the icing on the cake, and I thought that was the most human way. And again, being around wrestling and the stories and the jokes and all that for so long, no matter how many other documentaries have been done, how many interviews with Kevin that have been done, that was the most humanizing thing, and I think the most important thing that the Von Erich family, looking back, I am so happy this movie got made for them because I think they needed it. And I think not even that they needed it, but I can tell you as a wrestling fan who grew up in that culture from the time of watching them when they were all alive to where we are now, and some of the ways that that family is looked at and the fact that it always is such a black cloud. Boy, I thought it was just a beautiful platinum lining put in a very dark story.
Yeah, I agree. And I've told people, if you know go see it for the first time, it is not a wrestling movie. It is a
No.
movie about a family. It is a movie about brothers and what immense tragedy fell on them. And if you go into it like that, yeah, it's an absolute masterpiece, and I love it. And it's like you said, just a wonderful tribute to that family.
Jess was pissed at the Flair guy, though. That was the shit.
All right, there we
Having
go.
to deal with this for the last 20 years through me, I think that was the only thing she was disappointed. What's with the Flair guy? Like,
Yeah.
of all things, that what she's crying throughout the rest of the thing. She's almost offended by Flair.
Real quick on WWE, right now it's all about building to the Royal Rumble. We get it, and it's next week, and all good stuff. Couple things though have happened. First of all, SmackDown, we had the match with Austin Theory and Carmelo Hayes. Scary spot. They're coming off the top rope. They end up knocking heads, and they had to cut the match off and take him to the back. Um, I think we have heard that. I think Austin Theory is okay. Carmelo Hayes might be in concussion protocol. I haven't heard anything like solid about that. But it also kind of shined a light on the fact that we seemingly have seen a lot of injuries as of late in WWE. You got Charlotte Flair with the knee stuff. You got Ilya Dragunov. You got all these other guys, and it made me think leading to WrestleMania 32 back in 2016 when you had a bunch of folks injured. Are is WWE in danger of having being down, as far as talent goes, leading up to WrestleMania 40?
They have an embarrassment of riches right now where injuries would be tough, especially say Seth Rollins actually banged up his knee. And again, I think if he was in real bad shape, we would have known about it by the time we were recording this. So let's hope for the best there. Carmelo is going to be on NXT as I give up when we record this thing. He's going to be there. Now, Austin Theory is still in protocol then in that case because he seemed to be the one that got it the worst, and there was concern about both of them, but he seems like he is still going to be held out for the time being. We had a rash of injuries in the Stardom women's promotion is starting in about what was it, June, I think it was, where they lost like 9 women. There were a couple with cervical issues, there was a couple with this, there was a wrist, there was a knee, it's like it was just one after another. We had this with AEW, we had people out, and we still got people out right now. It's just how things go. The good part for WWE in a time like this is they are so stacked, they are so deep. They haven't had Roman Reigns heavy in the mix. You could always bring in Roman Reigns being heavy in the mix. We're talking about Brock Lesnar because it's the season coming back. You're able to pull him off the bench. Logan Paul, can you, hey, look, we don't need you to wrestle, but can you show up a little more? We'll put you in an 8-man. So they have, to me, a lot more over options that they can play around and slide and make things happen with if they need to, but you don't want to see Kaiser go out. Eric's out. You feel so bad for Cora Jade, who came back after such a long time, and then she's out again. And why does it seem to be so many ACL injuries that have been popping up, especially when it comes to the women in NXT? It's just one of those things, and I think they're just right now at a bad point and a bad time. There was a time a couple of years ago where it seemed like everybody was getting hurt down in NXT with a rotator cuff or a shoulder injury. Did they change how they lifted and some of the things that they were doing? Probably, because we don't hear about it as much. Maybe it was just a bad stretch. Are they going to have to do the same if we keep coming up with ACL injuries? Yeah, I guess we are probably going to have to look at that, but I don't think it's anything to freak out about now. It just seems and feels like a line of bad luck more than anything else, but they are right now, to me, the best equipped to handle it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you mentioned Seth possibly tweaking his knee. He's getting evaluated. Last night in the match against Jinder Mahal.
How bad would it be to lose Seth? But then you go, well, okay, you got Damian and Drew. You have like they're so very, very lucky in that way, the way things are humming right now for them, which again, I mean, it makes it to me. I'm really interested in seeing what they do with the Royal Rumbles because I expect my expectations for these Rumbles are high because I expect ridiculous gimmick names in. I want to see Mickey James in. I want to see uh, uh, Mercedes come back if that's the way it's going to be. I want to see Jade Cargill possibly just show up, get thrown out again. Who cares? They may wait for her until after Mania, but that's what I want. I want to see some names. I want to see some excitement. I want to see some drama after you made me laugh and after you entertained me with the last 4, 6 people in the ring. I want there to be some serious stars in there and getting it going because your champions are Rollins, your champion is Roman Reigns. You have Cody Rhodes back and CM Punk and this story and that story. Like to me, this should be good. My expectations sometimes over the last couple of years with the Rumble has faltered because they have faltered. Even if you like the result, the structure, and some of the people they've had in it, it doesn't feel like it used to. I'm expecting these to feel like they used to, and I'm expecting a hot run to Mania.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Before I let you go, last night was also the Emmys, and Paul Walter Hauser won an Emmy. He won Best Supporting Actor in a limited anthology series or movie for his work in Blackbird. His acceptance speech not only shouted out his match with Matt Cardona at Wrestling Revolver, also shouted out Kota Ibushi and the Wolfpack and asked somebody to go get the tables. Has pro wrestling returned to the mainstream now that it's being referenced on the Emmys?
It is the mainstream. Look, everything we do in this world is pro wrestling. It's all a work. It's all fabulous going on. Look at your politics, for heaven's sakes. Look at how that's presented to you. It's all pro wrestling at the end of the day. But it is nice when you have somebody involved in a business like the entertainment industry that is such a big fan of you, especially if your name is Matt Cardona or Kota Ibushi. It's like it's one thing to name Ric Flair or Hulk Hogan. I wouldn't even say, Rock and Steve Austin. Okay, maybe those will still work too. Other than that, it's hard to get a lot of people to know who the hell you're talking about. Andre the Giant is still a name that people recognize and go pro wrestling. I don't know if Kota Ibushi would have been that person, but this gentleman is a huge wrestling fan. I know so little about him. The only thing I think I've seen him in was the I, Tanya movie where he played Jeff Galooly, or not Jeff Galooly, but whoever the guy's
Oh,
name was.
the bigger guy.
Yeah, who hit Nancy
Yeah.
Kerrigan with the stick or whatnot and the club. So that's been the only thing I've seen him in. So I'm not familiar with his work at all. But obviously, he showed up on an AEW show with his Emmy, and apparently the Jeff Jarrett and his people stole it. I wonder if he ever got that Emmy back. But it's when you have somebody like that is such a wrestling fan that he's already won Emmys, he's got all this work going on, but he still loves wrestling so much where he'll go to an indie show and work an angle with a Matt Cardona. I mean, great. Did I think it was corny? Sure. But are all those events corny? Yes. So, as a wrestling fan, anything that actually helps push the business and put eyes on the business in any sort of positive way, hey, why not? Look, you throw that piece of crap up there against the wall, and not all of it's going to stick, but some is always going to stick. And you just hope that those people stick around and really do become great fans of some of the other stuff that they'll see on that show and get the word out about whoever it is, because again, you get buzz behind an Effie or again, all these personalities. Matt Cardona just on the Indies, what he was able to do for himself. So again, you can make real new fans that way, and the more eyeballs, the better.
Absolutely. And look, I saw it live and it popped me when I was going, did he just mention Matt Cardona? All right. There we
And
go.
it's funny, it's funny. They asked what's the kid's name? Jeremy Allen White, who
Yeah.
played Carrie, and I can't what's the name of the show that he's on? I don't
Bear.
even what is the Bear?
The bear.
I
Yes.
saw him. They added, hey, look, this show's on Fox and SmackDown's on Fox, and it's like he so graciously, without didn't throw his face, and contorted of like, yeah, I played a wrestler in one thing, you jerk. I'm not going to go on Smack. Like even these guys today, they answer with, if they wanted me to do it, they'd have to give me some time, and I'd love to have Zach and everybody there with me. And it's like, if you would have asked somebody that 30 years ago who played a wrestler, like ask Ed Asner about his role in The Wrestler and see how he talked about that. I just the fact that it is so accepted and wrestling is accepted as as an entertainment, truly as an entertainment thing. Again, there's pros and cons to that, especially when you grow up in a different era. But the fact that these guys are not legitimately getting shot or stabbed or having bad things happen to them, and they may be able to get insurance because they can get into the movie business because the dude is a really big wrestling fan, and now I have a SAG card and insurance for life. Like, it's better now in a lot of ways. It's so much better.
It is. It is. He is Mike Sempervive. Catch him on the Wrestling News, on the Mid Atlantic Championship Podcast, on the Big Audio Nightmare, and catch him weekdays on Wrestling Observer Live with Brian Alvarez. Mike, man, I miss talking to you. I'm glad we got to connect. I always have a blast talking to you. Thanks so much for doing this, man. All the best to you, and we'll talk again soon.
Stu, as always, I appreciate it anytime, my man.